Okay, well, it is just shortly after 1 o'clock, so why don't we go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining early and listening to me type if you were on early. Um, very excited to be presenting this March education call for you. And just a disclaimer, if you are online and on the phone, if you wouldn't mind muting your computer speakers or your phone, one or the other, just so we don't get any feedback. Your line should be automatically muted. If you do have questions throughout the presentation or once we get to questions, feel free to push #6 to unmute your line. And Kathy, are you there on audio to introduce yourself? I see that you're online, but I'm not sure if you dialed in or if you're going to use your computer. Well, we'll go ahead and if Kathy does dial in or is available via audio, we'll let her introduce herself when we have an adequate window to do so. But Kathy is our new education director for the DBC Education Center. She's the point person who's organizing these great calls throughout the year. So I, on the outset, want to thank her for reaching out to Jim to have him come and join us and talk about his journey as a kidney disease patient and the ways that and strategies that he's used to sort of overcome being a kidney disease patient and still reach all of his goals. So Jim, if you're ready, feel free to take it away and I'll advance your slides for you.
Okay, thanks, Christy. And just so everybody knows, Christy, I'll just say next slide or whatever when we get there.
Perfect.
First off, since this is my very first dealings with the dialysis patients, I, number one, appreciate Christy and Kathy inviting me, and I appreciate those of you that are on the call for giving me the chance to, as my friends would say, hear myself talk today. Because today, from my standpoint, is certainly not going to be a training or a teaching session. I don't know everybody's background on the call, but I will tell you that I am a patient. I have been a transplant recipient for about 13 and a half years now. And since I'm going to talk today about goal setting, I'll be very honest with you. If I start coughing or clearing my throat, it is simply because I have been fighting for the very first time in 13 and a half years the worst case of the flu I maybe have ever had. I'm sure it's pure coincidence, but I also believe everything happens for a reason. So I'm going to talk about why goal setting has been so important to me over the years that I've been dealing with kidney disease, which is actually since 1998, and I'll say a little bit more about that in a few minutes. But goal setting has always been extremely important to me. I come out of the business community. Prior to my illness, I had my own consulting business. I've spent time in the corporate world. I've worked for myself and I've worked for others. And I've always found that if I set goals and live by those goals, that life has been a little less complicated for me. So again, I'll address some of those issues later. I think everyone's looking at the very first slide, and when Kathy and I first started talking, I said, you know, I really want to say something about who I am and what I am, and we'll talk about my background here in a few minutes. But when I say about who I am and what I am, I'm a person who just simply, and this is not a pep talk by any stretch, but I'm a person who simply doesn't believe there's nothing I can't accomplish if I want to accomplish it bad enough. So when you look at I can, I will, I did, and I will, as we all know, especially those of us with kidney disease or kidney issues, there's no getting well. And that's kind of where I started my journey back in 1998. I had general practitioner doctor because I was in for another very serious situation I was dealing with. It was actually a pretty serious hernia. He told me that I had kidney disease, and my first reaction was, good, let's hurry up and tell me how I can get well so I can move on and get this behind me. As we all know, I've over the years have certainly learned you don't get well from kidney disease. There is no cure. Even transplant is not a cure. And as I sit here dealing with the flu, I realize just because I got a transplant or just because I take care of myself doesn't mean that I'm not going to continue to have issues in life. So so if I say things that sound like I believe I can do anything, I'm not that naive, but I do believe I can overcome an awful lot if I set my mind to it and I live by my goals. So when I say I can, that's what first went through my mind when I was diagnosed with kidney disease. I can overcome this, I can get well, and I can move on with my life. And all the lessons that I learned since then, we can talk about or discuss here as the hour goes on. I also believe that I will do something if I set my mind to it. And in retrospect, quite frankly, I did do something. It was never easy. I will tell my story in terms that I think some of you can relate to. I have been told on 2 occasions over the last 20 years or 19 years that I probably wasn't going to pull through this. I never let that control me. I do believe I overcame an awful lot, and I will continue to overcome an awful lot. And so today is not just about goal setting. I hope it's a little bit of a pep talk for everyone on the call that you can live an awfully normal life if you want to. And so having said that, I'll get off of my soapbox and let's move on to the next slide, Christy. There, that should wake everybody up. Now you have to know who I am and who's talking to you. The reason I wanted that is I'm also a communications person. I came out of the business world. I used to be in human resources. I've done a lot of communications training, and I believe that the more we know each other and know the people that we work with and deal with, the better we're going to operate together. And I feel that way about my medical team. I actually was talking to my nephrologist this morning, and he and I have become very close. And I wanted you to see that I'm a normal person that contracted a disease that is not pleasant and it's not fun to deal with, but it is something that I have learned to live with and that I've been able to overcome. I was very, very blessed. Once I reached a point where I was eligible for a transplant, I had 3 people step forward. Actually, I had a number of people step forward. I must have owed them money, is the best I can tell, because they all came forward to be tested. And the first 3 people that were tested, among them was my wife of now 51 years. And so Joyce, my wife, was my donor, and I'll be forever grateful to her for what she's done. Following my transplant, I have a very, very successful, I have 2 very successful daughters, but my daughter, who lives down around Nashville and is in the music business and so on, she continued to tell me, Dad, you really need to go out and tell people what it is that you've gone through, what you've dealt with, and how they can possibly overcome many of their situations. So I listened to Sherry. I looked into opportunities. I became a patient advocate. I've done work over the years with RSN out of Los Angeles, the Renal Support Network. If any of you know Lori Hartwell, I've done a lot of work over the last 10 or 15 years with Network 9 and 10, now just Network 9. I'm very proud to be a member of the Network 9 PAC and the LAN and also the board of directors. And I do know that there's a couple of folks here on the call that are from that group, and I appreciate you being on the call, so thank you very much. I was also quite flattered and honored to be asked a couple of years ago to be a member of the National LAN, and have done work with them for the last couple of years. And as you can see, I've done some speaking. I am a military veteran. I served time in Vietnam many years ago. I like to fancy myself as an entrepreneur and a writer, and I've written numerous articles over the years and actually published a couple of short books. I'll mention those later. I'm not trying to sell anybody books, but that has done two things for me. It has been therapy for me to work through a lot of challenges. But it's also kind of the way I have expressed how I've dealt with kidney disease and all the complications that can come with it. I am today, still do some consulting work and a trainer. I'm a little older now, and we won't get into that, but I only mention it because I've slowed down just a little bit. Even though just a couple hours ago, flu or no flu, I just came from the gym. So I'm a kind of an avid exerciser, and I have done that for so many years. And here, my sales pitch for exercise is I truly believe that exercise has been one of the reasons I've pulled through some of the things I've pulled through. So that is me, and I will just say this, anytime that I'm speaking today, please feel free to interrupt. I will answer any questions that I can, and if I don't know the answers, I'll certainly try and find them and get something back to you as quickly as possible through Christy or Kathy. So that is me. Christy, if we could go to the next slide, please. We're actually here today to talk about goal setting, and what does that have to do with the battle that I'm guessing most of us on this call are dealing with, either as caregivers or as patients. And the first thing that came to my mind when I was asked to participate in today's call was what did I do before I got sick? What did goal setting have to do with my life, and what contribution did it make to where I was before kidney disease grabbed me? And my time in the military, my time in the business world, my very fortunate time of owning my own company for about 6 years before I got sick, I looked back and I realized that each step that I went through, I went back to successful goal setting. Not always easy, not always something that I would have to say was fun, but it worked for me. And so I would suggest today that if you're on your computer, that you write down the 5 words that you see in front of you. If you are on a phone call, I'll kind of drag my feet and go a little bit slow here, so if you have an opportunity to write this down, I don't know what your exposure to goal setting is, but basically the 5 main ingredients of good goal setting starts with you must be specific. I will tell you that when I was first told how sick I was, my first reaction, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, was, well, good, let's hurry up and tell me how to get well. I'll get through this and move on. So when I set goals, my goal was to get well. In retrospect, I realized what a silly goal that was. You just don't get well. You have to do things that help you accomplish that goal. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the specific things that I have done over the last, since 1998 when I first learned that I was sick, and hope that that you will consider that if you are, if goal setting looks like something that will work for you, and I hope it does, that the more specific you are and the more narrow your goals are, the more successful you're going to be. And they can actually turn out to be kind of fun. If I can digress for just a second, when I learned I had the flu 2 weeks ago, my immediate reaction to any time that I feel bad is to hurry up and quit feeling bad. I needed to know what I had to do, and so I talked to my general practitioner doctor. I talked to my nephrologist. I actually went and had blood work done, and so I sorted out what are the next steps that I need to accomplish in order to meet my specific goal of feeling better. And so any goal that you set needs to be, number one, specific, because if you do something as broad as I'm going to get well, there's no measurement for that. So that kind of leads me to point number two. Your goal must be measurable, and I'll take the easy way out on that. If suddenly you learn that your creatinine is 5.0 or 10.0 or 14 or 15.0, in order to accomplish a goal of getting your creatinine down, you have to understand, or I believe you need to understand, what is creatinine, where is my problem originating from, and what can I do to take a step at a time to either get my creatinine at a level that I can deal with, or if my creatinine is out of control, then what are my next steps to help myself improve? And so there's, when I say measurable about any phase of your illness, in order to accomplish getting better, and I'm going to continue to call it getting better, in order to accomplish getting better, we have to know what it is that's put us in the situation we're in. My own personal situation is I have never been obese. I have never had high blood pressure. I have never been diabetic. So when I was informed that I had kidney disease, and not just kidney disease, by the time I found out my kidneys were let's say, in a challenging situation, I was down to about 20% functioning with my kidneys, and I had no symptoms. The doctors have told me repeatedly over the years, most of that is the result of the exercise that I've done ever since I was a young person. And so I didn't know I was sick until somebody told me, and once they told me, then things began to get bad because we began treating it, and once we started treating it, I started experiencing a whole lot of challenges, which leads me to, if I'm going to get better, whatever I want to do to get better has to be attainable. So if I say, well, okay, I'm going to take my my creatinine from 10 down to 6, as those of us with kidney disease know, you just don't do that. You just don't quit eating things and quit drinking things to get it down. So we need to do some research, in my opinion, and understand, number one, how did we get to where we are, whatever the cause of that might be. And I realize some of us are actually born with kidney issues. So sometimes you have to kind of step forward and say, there's nothing I can do about the beginning, but why don't I start working at the middle and see if I can be better. So once your goals are specific, measurable, and attainable, then they have to be relevant. They have to be relevant to your situation. Don't treat other issues that you might be dealing with, and I realize that every disease has its own peculiarities, but if the cause of your problem is diabetes, then obviously you need to work on that particular part of your problem before you can work on solving your kidney issues. So that's a pretty simple example, but when I say relevant, it has to be important enough to work on, not just something that you you decided it might be fun to do this because I know I can accomplish it. From my perspective, everything I've done to overcome my illness or to overcome what I've overcome has had relevance to it. I always knew what my end result was desired. I didn't always get there, but I knew where I was going. And it needs to be time-bound. When I say I'm going to overcome kidney disease in the next 5 years, that's a nice thing to say. However, there are countless steps between now and the end of that 5 years of things that I needed to do. So, for example, if you have a desire or you are desirous of being on the transplant list, then there needs to be some research done on what do I need to do to get on that list? How do people get on it? Can I get on more than one list? Can I live in New York and be on a list in Florida? When you look at the entire goal-setting process, it really needs to be time-bound, and to make it time-bound, we have to have a clear understanding of what it is we're dealing with. So let me just summarize my goal-setting definition, and from this point on, I want to talk about my illness. Not that my illness is any more or less important than anybody else's, but it is the way that I dealt with my illness that made goal setting so important to me. Having said that, I hope you will have written these things down. I would also encourage you, if you have access to a computer or you know someone who has access to a computer, that you can simply put in goal setting, and you will find these 5 items. They are universal in the field of goal setting, that you must be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. And if you live by these guidelines and then learn what it is that each of them means, I believe people like yourselves and me can overcome an awful lot. So go ahead, Christy, to the next slide. How did I discover I had kidney disease? And I know there's people on the call that have dealt with kidney disease their entire lives. Others, as I said before, may be diabetic, may have some weight issues. There's a number of things that can cause kidney disease. Personally, because I served in the infantry in Vietnam, I feel that many of my problems over the years have been a result of exposure to Agent Orange. Now, that is my opinion. So I want to tell you, please don't leave the call today and go tell somebody that, wow, I was in Vietnam and I got kidney disease from Agent Orange. I don't think there's any verification of that, other than I've been very privileged to meet veterans all over the country who have similar stories to mine, and the only thing that we have in common is the exposure that we had. But looking at the common causes of kidney disease, the diabetes, the obesity, high blood pressure, et cetera, I had none of those. So when I discovered I had kidney disease, it was a real surprise. And my general practitioner, and I say this in all due respect to my doctor, he is still my doctor, so I have a lot of respect for him. He couldn't for the life of him tell me why I had kidney disease. He knew that I was an avid exerciser. He knew my life. He'd been my doctor for many, many years. And we just didn't know where I got it. And to this day, I don't know how I contracted kidney disease. I got it. I deal with it. And that's the way life is. And that's the way I'm going to continue to look at it. I can't worry about the past. So I had gone to the doctor in order to have another issue treated. Because I'm an avid exerciser, I had lifted one too many weights and had a very, very serious hernia. If you know anything about hernias, I had a hernia that was on the verge of rupturing, which can be quite life-threatening. So when they told me they couldn't do the surgery for the hernia because my kidneys didn't work, it was a real shock. So I began to deal with that. quite frankly, I was beyond surprised. But being one who needs to understand, I guess I'm one who always asks the question why. I began doing my research and trying to find out, where did I get this, what caused it, what have I done to put myself in this situation. And as I'm sure most of the people on the call will agree, there are really no answers to any of that. So my goal of finding out how did I contract kidney disease, excuse me, I wasn't able to set that goal. So I had to change my, my approach and ask myself, okay, if I have it, how am I going to begin to overcome it? Now, I mention that because in the area of goal setting, remember I said specific, measurable, attainable, etc. The goal, I'll use a football analogy. The people run down the field when they play football, and they have 100 yards to go to score, depending upon where they got the football. Sometimes they have 50 yards yet to go. Sometimes they have 100 yards to go. Sometimes they've only got a yard or so to go. So the goal post, the crossing line, can change regularly. So many people set goals, and I sense a lot of frustration that they say, well, I can't get to that goal because the goal keeps moving. Well, my attitude is I move the goalpost. I can't do that on the football field, but I can certainly do that in my life. So if I say I'm going to do something to make my life better, to make myself feel better, and it becomes unattainable, which is one of the 5 steps, then it's not a matter of quitting. It's I change where the goalpost is, because my goal at that point is to have a feeling of victory, because at the end result of all goal setting for me is to have a victory. And it can be a little victory or it can be a huge victory, but I take my goals one step at a time, and as I click them off and I realize that I have accomplished them, I have a feeling of accomplishment, that I have done this. I don't do any of this by myself. I have been so blessed with a medical team, with nephrologists and doctors that have been there for me and have worked with me, and they know that I'll drive them crazy asking questions, but it has paid off. Let me kind of stop here and say that I don't just have kidney disease. In the course of all of my treatments many years ago, I also had my liver damaged. So I have cirrhosis of the liver. Just to let you know, you can get cirrhosis from a whole lot of things besides just drinking. But I have cirrhosis of the liver. I have neuropathy in both legs and feet. I have arthritis in both of my feet. I have some issues with clogged arteries. I'm almost 72 years old, so as much as I would like everybody to think I've led the perfect life, that's not quite true. But I have learned to work through those issues. I have dealt with a great deal of skin cancer. I've had the side of my face removed, had the cancer taken out, and had my face put back. We won't go back to my picture to see if that surgery worked, but from my standpoint, it did work. So my point is, once I discovered I had kidney disease, down the road, many other things came into the picture, and I had to learn to deal with each of those, and with each of those steps, I set goals. So please don't ever be afraid to change your goals. Goals are not set in concrete. Approach them as if they are, but as soon as you find out that you cannot overcome the goal for whatever reason, don't be afraid to take a side road and change the goal. Remember that your goal is to accomplish and to feel better about it. So, okay, that is how I discovered I had kidney disease. It was a complete surprise. and not the same way that most other people have told me they found out they had kidney disease. Okay, Christy, thank you. In the area of goal setting and in my own personal life, when I first found out I was sick, when I first realized, and I went through all the stages of anger and denial and all of those that we've all dealt with, when I first realized that, okay, this was something I had to attack on my own, and I also had to attack with the help of others. So part of my goal was to meet the right people. I quickly found out, again, nothing against my doctor, but that my general practitioner was not the guy that was going to be able to help me. He didn't know a whole lot more about kidney disease than I knew. So it took me 3 months. I paid a heavy price for going those 3 months, but it took me 3 months to finally meet a nephrologist that was willing to work with me and was able to help me get to where I was headed. In the first 9 months that I was sick, I had my abdominal cavity drained 34 times. That means that I was so full of fluid they couldn't keep the fluid off of me, so they had to pull it off of me 34 times. If you've, I always say this to people because I always feel so impressive when I can say the word paracentesis. So there's my big word for the day. Please don't ask me to spell it. I had a paracentesis done 34 times, and that means they put a needle in my abdominal cavity and they pulled the fluid off of me because of the pressure that was being put on my lungs and on my chest cavity. In that course of events, I was on many diuretics. The diuretics depleted my electrolytes. My wife found me in the bathtub one night at 3 o'clock in the morning where I had visited the bathroom and passed out. When I flipped over the bathtub, I fractured both elbows. I had a minor concussion and I broke 3 ribs. So I spent a week in the hospital as a result of that. Once I got through all of that, I had a serious weight issue to the point where my muscles completely atrophied and I lost my ability to walk. So I live in a 2-story house. I still live in that house. I'll never own it, even though I've been here for 36 years. Financial issues, as we all know, also raise their ugly heads when you have a chronic illness. It would take me 40 to 45 minutes to get to bed at night because I couldn't walk, so I scooted up the steps backwards, 1 step at a time. Now, I'm going to first off admit I am a complete and total stubborn Irishman. There had to be better ways for me to get to bed at night. Like all I had to do was put a bed downstairs and I wouldn't have to climb the steps. But that would have been too easy because my goal at the time was to get my muscles back in a condition where I could function. So over a period of a couple of months, my wife helped me learn to walk again. And we literally did that a few steps at a time. We would get me to the front porch. We would get me to the driveway. We would get me to the end of the driveway. And the first time I ever went for a walk with my dog, and my dog Maggie, who's now gone, she was with me every step of the way. The first time I ever went for a walk by myself without my wife, I actually got a half mile from home and I couldn't walk anymore. This was before the age of cell phones. So the only thing I could do was sit and rest for about 45 minutes until I could get the strength back to get home. My goal that day had been to make it a half mile. And when I came home, I was able to celebrate that little goal that I made. Now, between the time that I lost my ability to walk, and that day I had many small goals. There were small goals to get to the front porch, to the driveway, to the mailbox, etc. But I emphasize that by letting you know that every big goal has countless small goals. And the more small goals you have, the more victories you'll have. And the more victories you have, the more success you'll have dealing with your situation. So realizing that everybody on this call, everybody in this world who has any kidney issues has a story of their own, I can only emphasize that what helped me get through was little goals, was small goals that led to bigger goals, that led to bigger goals, and ultimately led to my transplant. So those are the steps that I began to follow, and there were many in between. I've had 9 major surgeries since 1998. I've had my abdominal cavity sewn back together 5 times because I got so huge with fluid that my abdominal wall kept rupturing, and they would have to go in. So I have a stomach pretty much made of mesh. But I took each of those steps one at a time, and in the long run, believe me, they have paid off for me. So that's the steps I followed, and there's many more in there that I'll be glad to discuss with anybody at any time. But in the interest of time, we'll move on today. So those are the steps I had to getting well. So the next slide, please, Christy. The 10 months of doom and gloom, I threw this in. I'm not a negative person, and I almost was reluctant to put in words like doom and gloom because they just kind of bore me, quite frankly. But my physical being was destroyed in that first 10 months, or 9 months that I mentioned. There's a picture here of obviously of an old picture of someone going on dialysis. I hadn't reached the point of dialysis yet when I had already 6 major surgeries, lost the ability to walk, and had just major issues. Found out that my liver was damaged because of the medications I had been on, and what was actually told in the year 2000, my doctor sat me down. He was a phenomenal man. I only say he was because he's now retired. But he told me, he said, Mr. Dineen, he said, I've never had a patient in all the years I've practiced, and he had been a nephrologist for 37 years, that lived more than 2 years, who was as sick as you. And that immediately sent me home to put down some new goals. First off, I needed to prove him wrong. As much as I liked him, it was more important to me that he be wrong than me liking him. So every time something occurred to me or for me or against me, it drove me to setting a new goal to overcome whatever the problem was. Let me kind of sidetrack here. If it sounds like I live my life with a pencil and a piece of paper or a computer, and I live this regimented, restrictive life, trust me, I do not. I go to the gym every morning. I walk a mile every day. My dog and I love to go out and walk around a lake here in my neighborhood and just enjoy life. We go to try to go on vacation every year if we can save the money. I'm not restricted by anything. My activity with Network 9, with the National LIN, with the board of directors, I stay as busy as a person can stay, as I always say, who's supposed to be as sick as I am. But I think I continue to move on because I do those things. So when I say that you can overcome anything, I believe that with all my heart. I'm not just a coach who's trying to tell everybody you can win every game, but you can certainly overcome an awful lot of them. So those are the 10 months of doom and gloom and destruction, and that's enough of the negative words. I don't want to use those anymore. So if we could move on, Christy, please. my 3 years of progress. When I finally went on dialysis, I went on dialysis in the year 2000. So between 1998 and the end of 2000, I had, as I said, 6 major surgeries. I had contracted cirrhosis of the liver. I lost my ability to walk. I'd been told I probably wasn't going to go a whole lot longer by my doctor, and that if I didn't go on dialysis, I didn't have any chance of overcoming all of this. So we had found that because of my exercise, I had pretty good veins and arteries, and a fistula was probably going to be the best approach for me. So the fistula was put in, and suddenly, after my fistula was put in, my kidneys really went south. And as you know, if you are a transplant recipient, or if you are on the list and you know what the procedures are, you need, I think it's still 6 to 8 weeks or so for your fistula or graft to mature. Well, I didn't have 6 to 8 weeks. They needed to do something immediately, and the answer seemed to be to use a catheter on me. Again, I'm not saying that I'm the smartest Irishman, but I am one of the most stubborn you'll ever meet. I couldn't stand the thought of a catheter going in my going into me any place. So we started dialysis. Within just a few days, my arm turned completely black and blue from the fingertips all the way to my shoulder. But I got through all of that. I spent 3 years on dialysis, and then I found that I might be able to get a transplant if I could find a donor. I've been very blessed with wonderful friends in my life. My first 3 people to be tested were my oldest daughter, my wife, and my brother. And my brother is a couple years younger than me. For family reasons, my wife wanted to be the first. She was tested. All 3 were matches. So I am really a very grateful man. I know what people go through trying to find donors. I appreciate that so much. I have just been very, very blessed. And so Joyce gave me a kidney on November the 11th, 2003, and I have really never looked back. I have tried to look forward. So those 3 years of progress for me were those years on dialysis. I never hated dialysis. Dialysis was a godsend to me. I went, it made me feel better, and that's all that counted, and it helped me set new goals each time. I had numbers from my blood work, from my dialysis treatments, from everything my doctor told me, and I fought daily to meet those goals until I got my transplant. So next slide, please, Christy. I know we're getting up against time here. My victory was not just the transplant. My victory, I had hundreds, thousands of victories up to this point. And the reason I like this chart so much, and I want you to look at this in relation to goal setting, the little guy down there at the bottom was me, and the guy there at the top was me. And all of those little guys in between had goals, and the goals led to each of those steps. And those steps allowed me to take the next step and to finally get to where I wanted and needed to be. By then, I had 2 grandchildren. My grandkids are now teenagers. They never had to see me go through all of this because by the time I got my transplant, they had come along, but they weren't old enough to have experienced this. But every one of them can tell you the story that I've just told you. My grandkids, I have explained it to them because I want them to understand that everyone in the world doesn't get to go play soccer. Everyone doesn't get to go swimming everyone doesn't have the benefits that they have had. And as a result, I'm so proud of them that all 5 of them have done work in their communities that I'm just really proud of. So that was victory to me, but the emphasis I want you to look at is my victory was made up of hundreds, if not thousands, of little victories. And it continues that way. Getting over this flu is a little victory for me. Those kind of victories can make you very successful. So the next slide, please. My approach to life, and I hope I've conveyed that because we're getting to the end of our time, is I do have a lifetime to go. I actually have been very privileged and very honored to speak all over the country on behalf of kidney patients and to represent what I have been through with kidney disease. And I had a lady ask me a question, and rarely, the people who know me will tell you I'm rarely not at a loss for words. But she caught me one day after one of my speeches. I had an audience of about 500 people, and she raised her hand and said, "Well, what would you have done if you died?" And I wasn't really sure how to answer that question because obviously I wouldn't have done anything. But she and I talked not only in the course of the presentation but afterwards. And I said, you know, someday I'm going to be gone. That's part of life. All I can do is the best I can do in the time that I have. And I would suggest to you that as you consider following the steps of goal setting, as you consider what can you do to make your life better, realize that it's all just part of life. And some people never get sick. Some people have much, much bigger problems than I'll ever dream of. I have a brother with cerebral palsy. My brother Tom has overcome so much. What I admire most about him is he has never allowed anybody to tell him he can't. And I hope that I'm conveying that to you. I believe that we can overcome anything, again, if we want to try hard enough. Next slide, please. Now, this is not a sales pitch for my book, but I wanted to put it in because what's important to me about this book is, number one, I believe it. I don't believe life is all that complicated. Now, some people say, well, you live in a dream world, Jim, and maybe at times that I do. But the one thing I realize is no matter how challenging, how difficult, how hard life is, it's just not complicated if I approach it a step at a time. My book has 9 steps in it. It is, it's made up of the 5 steps of goal setting, but I put it in my own words how I followed those steps in order to get me where I am today. Now the question may be where I am today. I will say this, I still go to the gymnasium every day. I can't do what I did when I was 30 years old or 40 or even 50 years old, but I'm there. And I take a great deal of pride in is that I can actually do a little bit more than some of the 20-year-olds. They may argue that, but that's my opinion. I'm going to stick with it. I still take that walk every day. I still try and stay involved in the kidney community to the best of my ability. The writing is therapy for me. I may not be the greatest writer in the world. In fact, I'm pretty sure I'm not. Robert Frost is rolling over in his grave right now. But I feel better having put my thoughts down on paper. And I would encourage you to find something that enables you to feel a sense of accomplishment every day. So I hope today has been a little bit helpful. I didn't want it to be a training or an educational session as much as I wanted it to be, here is how I overcame things. I believe you can overcome anything you want to. And I hope it's been of some benefit to you, and I appreciate all of your time. So with that, I'll be more than happy to try and answer questions, and if I can't, I'll try and find out the answers for you.
Well, thank you so much, Jim. If you do have any questions or comments, please push #6 to unmute your line. Excuse me. And if you are online as well, feel free to type your comment in the chat, and I can read those to Jim to be answered. I have a question for you to get started. Now, since now it seems like you're so focused on goal setting to help you get through your kidney disease and sort of overcome your kidney disease, were you always that goal-minded, or was that like a life shift once you did realize that, once you started having all these health struggles?
That's an excellent question, and I guess in a way I have been this way most of my life. Prior to my illness, I spent 24 years in the corporate world, and I owned my own consulting business for 6 years before I got sick. So that everyone understands, all challenges aren't, pardon me, medical or physical with kidney disease, and I'm sure most of the folks on this call would understand that. I didn't just lose my business. Because I was self-employed, I lost everything. As I said before, I'm still in the same house I've been in for 36 years, but it will never be mine. It belongs to me, the bank, and the hospital, but I'm still living here. So the reason I mention those things is as I grew up, I played a little sports in school, got married. I actually went to Vietnam after my daughter was born. My daughter was born just a few months about the time I went overseas. I've always been goal-oriented. I think what my illness did was show me that goal setting is more than just talking about goal setting. I was a trainer and a consultant in the business community for, as I said, close to 30 years, and it was real easy for me to tell you how to set goals. When I found out that I had to actually take those steps that I had believed in and talked about for years and save my own life, they became that much more important to me. So I appreciate the question. I've always been goal-oriented. It became even more valuable to me as my illness took over.
Hi, this is... No, go ahead.
Hi, this is Kathy. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Great. I just had a couple of things to say. I've known Jim for a number of years on various committees that he has served with me, and he's become both a friend and a colleague over the years. One of the things I can attest is that whenever he's been on a committee and we're working on a project and we need to move to the next step, Jim has always talked about, so how are we going to get there? What are we going to do to accomplish this? And I have seen that as a part of him since I first knew him. Wanted to share that. One other question, though, I have for you, Jim, is if somebody's working on a care plan with their facility staff, do you have some thoughts on how they can go about making their goals known or discovering what their goals might be, and to get the staff to work with them on that?
That is an excellent question, and I've served on both the PAC and the land for Network 9 for well over 10 years now. And actually this question, as you well know, Kathy, comes up repeatedly. In fact, it's come up in one of the groups that I work with here just recently. I think people have to understand that this is, let me rephrase that. I think we as people have to understand that this is about our life first. There's nothing selfish about that. And as such, if we're going to work with our staff to improve our lot in life, whatever that might be, we have to overcome this, I call it a communications issue.
Oh, Jim, did we lose you? Ironically, when you hit the term communications issue.
Hi, Christy. This is Kathy, and I think he was going to go on about the point about how important communication is with the staff, with family, to be able to set goals. Hopefully he'll be back on in just a second when he figures out that he's.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Oh, great.
Yeah, there you are.
Oh. I always wanted to be in that commercial. Can you hear me now? So there was my opportunity. No, I'm just a real stickler on communication. I think people have to say, you know, if this is about me, then I need to ask these questions and develop communication skills. And I realize that's a big task. But I believe there's a way to communicate with people. I'll say this very quickly because I know we're running out of time. When I was on dialysis, I made sure I did one thing. Everybody in the dialysis clinic, my goal was that they all loved me. Now, there were some of them, I'm sure, that didn't like me a whole lot. And trust me, there were some of them I didn't like to be around at all. But the fact of the matter is I needed them, and believe it or not, they needed me. I helped pay their checks. And so I was constantly trying to develop relationships and learn more about my situation and what they were doing and why were they doing things so that I understood it. So I would only suggest that I think more work needs to be done through LANs, PACs, and so on, to develop communication skills between patients and caregivers. I know that's a big challenge, and there's a whole lot of goals involved in that, but I think all patients would have a better outcomes if the communications were developed on a much stronger basis. So.
Hi, this is Nancy Spaeth, and I just wanted to say hello, Jim, and
Hi, Nancy.
Nice job.
Thank you. Good to hear from you.
Yes.
Well, I just want to add that Amos, who's on the call, mentioned in chat the importance of a positive mental attitude as well in goal setting and I guess in getting through kidney disease. So let's, in the spirit of ending on a positive note, I think that's a great place to start, to conclude this afternoon. Thank you so much all for joining. Thank you very much, Jim, for sharing your story and sharing the ways that you have been able to go beyond being a kidney disease patient. I can't express my gratitude enough. This is a very great call. And that's it from me. Thank you all so much again for joining. Our next call will be in March, March already, and hopefully we'll have you on there.
Thank you all very much.
Okay. Have a good day.
You too.